everyone. My name is Elissa Rigolski, and I am your friendly neighborhood mattress reviewer at mattressclarity.com. Instead of my usual mattress reviews today, I'm going to help you fall asleep with a soothing bedtime story. Today's story is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. So get comfortable, nestle under the covers, fluff your pillow, and relax as I read an excerpt from the classic story. Part 1. The Old Buccaneer. The old sea dog at the Admiral Benbow. Squire Trelawney, Dr. Lively, and the rest of these gentlemen having asked me to write down the whole particulars about Treasure Island, from the beginning to the end. Keep nothing back but the bearings of the island, and that only because there is still treasure not yet lifted. I take my pen in the year of grace and go back to the time when my father kept the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the brown old seaman with the sabre cut first took up his lodging under our roof. I remember him as it were yesterday, as he came plodding to the inn door, his sea chest following behind him, and a hand barrow, a tall, strong, heavy, nut-brown man, his hairy pigtail falling over the shoulder of his soiled blue coat, his hands ragged and scarred, with black, broken nails, and the saber cut across one cheek, a dirty, livid white. I remember him looking round the cover and whistling to himself as he did, and then breaking out in that old sea song that he sang so often afterwards, in the high, old, tottering voice that seemed to have been tuned and broken at the capstan bars. Then he rapped on the door with a bit of a stick, like a handspike that he carried, and when my father appeared, called roughly for a glass of rum. This, when it was brought to him, he drank slowly, like a connoisseur, lingering on the taste and still looking about him at the cliffs and up at our signboard. This is a handy cove, says he at length, and a pleasant, sitiated grog shop. Much company, mate? My father told him no, very little company. The more was the pity. Well then, said he, this is the berth for me. Hear you, matey, he cried to the man who trundled the barrow. Bring up alongside and help my chest. I'll stay here a bit, he continued. I'm a plain man. Rum and bacon and eggs is what I want. And that head up there for to watch ships off. What might you call me? You might call me Captain. Oh, I see what you're at. There. And he threw down 3 or 4 gold pieces on that threshold. You can tell me when I've worked through that, says he, looking as fierce as a commander. And indeed, bad as his clothes were, and coarsely as he spoke, he had none of the appearance of a man who had sailed before the mast, but seemed like a mate or a skipper accustomed to the obeyed or to strike. The man who came in with the barrow told us the mail had set him down the morning before at the Royal George, that he had inquired what inns there were along the coast, and hearing ours well spoken of, I suppose, and described as lonely, had chosen it from the others for his place of residence. And that was all that we could learn of our guest. He was a very silent man by custom. All day he hung around the cove or upon the cliffs with a brass telescope. All evening he sat in a corner of the parlor next to the fire and drank rum and water very strong. Mostly he would not speak when spoken to, only look up sudden and fierce and blow through his nose like a foghorn. And we and the people who came out to our house soon learned to let him be. Every day when he came back from his stroll, he would ask if any seafaring men had gone by along the road. At first we thought it was the want of company of his own kind that made him ask this question. But at last we began to see he was desirous to avoid them. When a seaman did put up at the Admiral Benbow, and now and then some did, making by the coast road for Bristol, he would look in at him through the curtained door before he entered the parlor. And he was always sure to be as silent as a mouse with any such was present. For me, at least, there was no secret about the matter, for I was, in a way, a sharer in his alarms. He had taken me aside one day and promised me a silver fourpenny on the first of every month if I would only keep my weather eye open for a seafaring man with one leg, and let him know the moment he appeared. Often enough, when the first of the month came around, I applied to him for my wage. He would only blow through his nose at me, stare me down. But before the week was out, he was sure to think better of it. Bring me my fourpenny piece, and repeat the orders to look out for the seafaring man with one leg. How that personage haunted my dreams, I need scarcely tell you. On stormy nights, when the wind shook the four corners of the house, and the surf roared along the cove and up the cliffs, I would see him in 1,000 forms, with 1,000 diabolical expressions. Now the leg would be cut off at the knee, now at the hip. Now he was a monstrous kind of creature who had never had but the one leg, and that in the middle of his body. To see him leap and run and pursue me over hedge and ditch was the worst of nightmares. And although I paid pretty dear for my monthly fourpenny piece, from the shape of these admonable fancies. But though I was so terrified by the idea of the seafaring man with one leg, I was far less afraid of the captain himself than anybody who knew him. There were nights when he took a deal more rum and water than his head would carry, and then he would sometimes sit and sing his wicked old wild sea songs, minding nobody. But sometimes he would call for glasses round and force the trembling company to listen to his stories, or bear a chorus to his singing. Often I have heard the house shaking with yo-oh and a bottle of rum, all the neighbors joining in for dear life, with the fear of death upon them, and singing louder than the other to avoid remark. For in these fits he was the most overriding companion ever known. He would slap his hand on the table for silence all around. He would fly up in a passion of anger at a question, or sometimes because none was put, and so he judged the company was not following his story, nor would he allow anyone to leave the inn till he had drunk himself sleepy and reeled off to bed. This is where we end our portion of the nighttime story. Snuggle under the comforter, get cozy, and have a great night's sleep.